talk about the beautiful business of milk today, yeah. I got milk. Let's talk about milk. Oh yeah, baby, let's talk about the beautiful business of milk today.
This episode of Got Milk is sponsored by Shunya Agritech, the folks revolutionizing cattle nutrition with hydroponic green fodder. Visit their website at shunya.live for more details or download the Shunya app from Play Store or App Store.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into India's agricultural scene.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is actually. We've got this super cool research paper from NABARD.
NABARD.
Yeah, the National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, Mumbai. They call it Agricultural Technologies in India, a review.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it basically lays out how technology has totally reshaped things for Indian farmers.
It really is amazing how India went from food shortages to having extra food.
Right, like a total turnaround.
And yeah, technology has been a huge part of that.
For sure. So let's start with, this paper talks about genetic enhancement. What's that even mean when we talk about Indian agriculture?
Well, think about it this way.
Yeah.
You've got India before the Green Revolution. They were relying on imports and aid for basic grains like rice and wheat.
Right.
Then came these high-yielding varieties.
High-yielding variety.
Yeah, or HYVs for short. They totally changed the game.
How so?
Well, they were bred to make way more grain per plant.
Okay, so like super productive crops.
Exactly, and that led to huge increases in yields.
So HYVs were all about quantity then?
Not just quantity, they were also tougher.
Tougher?
Yeah, like resistant to pests and diseases.
Well, that's smart.
Yeah, so farmers could grow more with less loss and less need for pesticides.
Makes sense. So what did farmers actually think of these HYVs? Did everyone jump on board right away?
Well, it was a mixed bag.
Mixed bag.
Yeah, the adoption of HYVs, it really depended on the region.
Ah, okay.
Some areas, like Punjab and Haryana, they embraced these varieties big time. Led to massive jumps in rice and wheat production. We're talking rice going from under 30 million tons to over 120 million tons.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, a fourfold increase. And wheat also went way up, over 100 million tons.
Wow. So some areas were totally on board. What about the places that weren't? Why would some farmers hesitate to use these new varieties?
Lots of reasons. Access to information, resources, things like good seeds and irrigation, that played a big role.
I can see that.
And then there's also cultural preferences and traditional farming practices. Those things matter too.
So like some farmers might have been hesitant to give up their tried and true methods.
Exactly. Something new and untested can be scary.
Right. So it sounds like there were good reasons on both sides, both for and against using this new technology. But the impact of HYVs went beyond just individual farmers, right?
Oh, absolutely. The fact that there was so much more grain available, it had this ripple effect.
Ripple effect.
Yeah, like the government could start programs to help the poor.
Like what?
Things like subsidized rations. It was a safety net for millions.
It's amazing how something as simple as a new kind of seed can make such a big difference for an entire society.
It really is.
But the paper doesn't just focus on rice and wheat. There are other success stories, like hybrid maize.
Oh, yeah. Hybrid maize was a revolution.
A revolution?
Yeah, I mean it. By crossing different types of maize, scientists created these hybrids that were higher yielding AD, better adapted to specific conditions.
So they were more productive, any more resilient?
Exactly. And that led to average yields doubling, and it really boosted the poultry industry, too.
Because maize is a key ingredient in poultry feed.
Right. It's like one innovation leads to another.
Like a domino effect.
And then there's Pusa basmati rice.
Yeah, the paper mentioned that.
It became a major export.
So these genetic advancements didn't just increase food supplies, they actually had an economic impact too.
Huge impact. The improved Pusa basmati varieties meant higher yields for domestic use. And it made Indian basmati rice super popular globally, bringing in foreign exchange.
It's like a double win, more food and more money.
Exactly. It shows what smart investments in research can do.
Makes you wonder though, if these HYVs were so successful, why do we need new varieties all the time? The paper mentioned something called varietal turnover.
Varietal turnover.
Yeah, it's like constantly replacing older varieties with new ones.
Right. It might seem strange, but it's actually super important.
Why?
Well, Pests and diseases evolve, so new varieties are needed that can resist these new threats.
Okay, that makes sense.
And also, consumer preferences change. People want different qualities like taste, aroma, or how it cooks.
So it's about keeping up with what people want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's climate change.
Right. That's a whole other challenge.
It brings new problems to agriculture, so we need varieties that are tough, drought resistant, heat resistant, things like that.
So it's like a constant race against pests, diseases, and a changing climate.
You could say that.
But the paper also says that adopting new paddy cultivars varies across India.
It does, yeah. It's not a uniform thing.
So why is that?
Well, things like access to information, credit, and infrastructure, those all play a role.
I can see that.
Like states with good extension services and irrigation, they tend to adopt new varieties faster.
So it's about having the right support systems in place.
Definitely. But even beyond those practical things, there might be cultural or social factors too.
Like what?
Well, some farming communities might be very attached to their traditional varieties.
Even if they're not as productive.
Yeah, maybe because of cultural significance or unique qualities. It's complicated, and researchers are still trying to understand it all.
So we've talked about the good stuff, how genetic enhancement boosted food production in India. But there are always challenges, right? Like trade-offs.
Yeah, absolutely.
What kinds of trade-offs?
Well, these improved varieties were great for boosting production, but they also raise concerns about whether natural resources, especially water, could keep up.
So it's about balancing increased production with protecting resources.
That's it, in a nutshell. It's a balancing act, for sure.
So tell me more about that. How did these new varieties impact water resources?
Yeah, the Green Revolution, it was a huge success.
Right.
But it did have some unintended consequences.
Like what?
Well, one of the biggest ones is groundwater.
Groundwater.
Yeah, over-extraction of groundwater, especially in places like Punjab and Haryana.
Those were like the heart of the Green Revolution, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. HYVs and intensive irrigation, that's what made them the breadbasket of India.
But now that same technology is putting their water resources at risk.
That's the tough part.
So what can be done about it?
Well, the paper talks about a few different things.
Like what?
One promising solution is micro-irrigation.
Micro-irrigation.
Yeah, things like drip and sprinkler irrigation. It's all about precision.
Precision.
Yeah, instead of flooding the whole field, water goes straight to the plant roots.
So less waste.
Way less.
Sounds efficient. Is it being used much? Like, can the average Indian farmer actually use this technology?
That's where things get a bit tricky. Micro-irrigation is great for saving water, but it costs money up front.
Oh, okay.
That can be a problem for a lot of small farmers.
Right.
The paper talks about how the government needs to step in,
How so?
things like subsidies and easier credit.
To make it more affordable.
Yeah, technology is great, but only if people can actually afford to use it.
For sure. Are there any bigger picture solutions? Like ways to manage water on a larger scale?
Oh, yeah. The paper talks about watershed programs.
Watershed programs.
Yeah, particularly in rain-fed areas where water is scarce.
So how'd they work?
Well, a watershed is like a big catchment area.
Okay.
It collects rainwater. So these programs focus on managing that whole area,
Managing it how?
building small dams, restoring ponds, things like that, and soil conservation measures, too, to keep the water in the landscape.
It's like a whole ecosystem approach.
Exactly. Looking at the big picture.
And what kind of impact do these programs have?
They're pretty amazing, actually. They increase water availability, boost productivity, and help farmers earn more.
Sounds like a triple win.
It really is. Good for people and, indeed, the environment.
That's great. So sustainable practices can work.
They can. They really can.
The paper also mentioned soil health, though. It seems like HYVs had a negative impact there, too.
Yeah, that's another challenge.
What happened?
Well, using lots of chemical fertilizers, that was encouraged to get the most out of HYVs.
Right.
But it ended up hurting the soil in many parts of India.
Hurting it how?
Depleting organic matter, messing with the nutrient balance.
So it's like the soil is losing its strength.
Kind of like that, yeah. And that's bad news for long-term productivity.
I can imagine.
Healthy soil is essential for sustainable agriculture.
Totally agree.
So the paper suggests shifting to balanced fertilizer use, using more organic stuff.
Organic stuff.
Yeah, like compost and manure. And crop rotation, too. That helps improve soil health.
It's about getting back to a natural balance.
Exactly.
Now, the paper also mentions crop residue burning, which sounds kind of scary.
It is a bit, yeah.
What is that?
After crops like rice and wheat are harvested, there's all this leftover stuff. Stalks, stubble, things like that.
Okay.
Farmers often burn it to clear the fields.
Seems like a quick solution.
It is, but it has consequences.
Like what?
big environmental and health problems. It pollutes the air, especially in North India during winter.
So it's dangerous for people's health.
Yeah, breathing that smoke can cause respiratory issues and other
Are
problems.
there other options besides burning, I mean?
There are, yeah. The paper talks about some promising alternatives.
Like what?
One is incorporating the residue back into the soil.
Oh, interesting.
It improves soil health, and you need less chemical fertilizer.
Turning a problem into a solution.
Exactly. There are also machines that can chop and spread the residue so it decomposes naturally.
Okay.
It's not always easy to get farmers to change their ways, though.
I can imagine. Habits are hard to break.
The paper really emphasizes the need for good extension services.
So farmers can learn about these new methods.
Yeah, education is key.
Speaking of practices, let's move on to farm mechanization. It seems kind of odd in a country with so many farm workers to be pushing for mechanization.
I know what you mean.
So why do it then?
It's not about replacing humans with machines entirely.
Okay.
It's about making things more efficient.
In what way?
Think about things like preparing the land, sowing seeds, harvesting. Those tasks are really labor-intensive, and they have to be done at specific times.
Right.
Machines can help farmers do those things faster, saving money and increasing how much they produce.
That makes sense. Especially with labor shortages becoming more common.
That's a real problem, yeah.
But if mechanization is so helpful, why isn't it more widespread? The paper says that very few farmers in India own tractors, for instance.
Cost is a big factor.
The cost of the machines.
Yeah, they're just too expensive for a lot of small farmers.
And they make up most of the farming population.
Exactly.
Are there any solutions for that?
Well, one thing is custom hiring centers. That's where farmers can rent machinery instead of buying it.
So they can share the costs.
Yeah, it makes it more affordable, especially for smallholders.
Like a sharing economy for tractors.
That's a good way to put it. But cost isn't the only issue.
What else is there?
The size and shape of landholdings in India.
Okay.
A lot of farms are very small.
Too small for big machinery.
Right. And the fields are often oddly shaped, which makes it hard to use machines effectively.
So the machines need to sit the farms.
That's a major challenge.
Are there machines designed for smaller farms?
That's what agricultural engineers are working on. The paper talks about developing smaller, more versatile machines that work for smallholder farmers.
Tailoring the technology to the situation.
Exactly.
But what about women? They play a big role in Indian agriculture, don't they?
A huge role. And the paper talks about the need for women-friendly machinery.
What does that mean?
Well, a lot of the existing machinery is designed for men.
So it might be too heavy or difficult for women to use.
Exactly. It's important to make technology that works for everyone.
Absolutely. So what are some examples of women-friendly machinery?
Well, think about tools that are lighter, easier to grip, and adjustable for different body sizes.
Okay.
Designers are also looking at ways to reduce vibration and noise, which can be tiring for women who are already working hard.
It's about making the work easier and safer for everyone.
That's the goal. But technology isn't everything.
What else is there?
Well, there are also social and cultural barriers for women.
Like what?
In some communities, it might be frowned upon for women to operate machinery.
That doesn't seem fair.
It's not. It's important to address those barriers through education and awareness programs.
So women could benefit from new technologies too.
Right. It's about equal opportunities.
So we've talked about making technology accessible, affordable, and inclusive. But the paper also mentions extension services. What are those, and how do they fit into all of this?
Extension services are like the bridge between research and the real world.
Okay.
They give farmers the information and training they need to use technology effectively.
So they help farmers understand and use the new machines.
Exactly. They also show farmers how to maintain the machines and answer any questions they might have.
Like having a tech support team for agriculture.
Kind of like that. But technology is always changing.
So extension services need to keep up.
They do. The paper talks about training extension workers on the latest advancements.
So they can pass that knowledge on to farmers.
Right. It's all about staying up to date.
Speaking of staying up to date, let's talk about climate change. How is that affecting Indian agriculture?
It's a big one. Climate change is a real game changer.
In what way?
We've got rising temperatures,
Yeah.
changes in rainfall,
Hmm?
more extreme weather events.
Right.
All of that impacts crop yields, livestock, even irrigation.
It's like a whole bunch of challenges all at once.
It is.
So what can we do? The paper mentioned something called climate smart agriculture.
Climate smart agriculture.
Yeah, or CSA. Is that part of the solution?
Definitely. CSA is all about helping farmers adapt to these changes.
Adapt how?
Well, for one thing, developing new crop varieties,
What kind of variety?
ones that can handle drought and heat.
So they're tougher.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we need to be smarter about water use.
Like with those micro-irrigation techniques we talked about.
Right. Making every drop count.
So CSA is about working with nature, not against it.
That's a good way to put it.
The paper also mentioned biofortification.
Biofortification.
Yeah. Is that related to climate change too?
It is in a way.
How so?
Well, biofortification is all about boosting the nutritional value of crops
Boosting it how?
by breeding crops that have more of certain nutrients, like iron or zinc.
So it's like building extra nutrition into the food itself,
Exactly. It can help fight malnutrition.
especially if climate change makes it harder to grow a variety of foods.
Right. It's like a safety net.
Are there actual examples of this in India? Like biofortified crops that are already being grown?
Oh, yeah. Iron-rich pearl millet,
Yeah.
zinc-rich wheat.
So it's already happening.
It is. It's pretty amazing stuff.
It is. It sounds super futuristic.
It kind of is, but it's also happening right now.
So that's biofortification. But what about digital technology? The paper talked about that too, right?
That did.
What's the deal with that? How is digital technology changing things?
Digital technology is changing everything these days.
Right.
Agriculture is no exception.
Okay.
We're talking AI, robotics, remote sensing, all that stuff.
Mm.
It can help farmers use resources more efficiently, make better decisions, and even get real-time help.
Wow.
It's the future of farming.
So how is it actually being used? Give me some examples.
Well, think about a farmer using a smartphone app.
Okay.
They can check on their crops, get weather forecasts specific to their farm, even get advice on pests and diseases.
That's cool.
It is. And there are drones, too.
Drones.
Yeah, drones with cameras that can fly over fields, spot problems, even apply fertilizer or pesticides precisely where they're needed.
That's like high-tech farming.
It is. But we have to make sure farmers aren't left behind.
What do you mean?
Well, not everyone has access to technology or the skills to use it.
Right. A digital divide.
Exactly. We need to bridge that gap. Provide training, make devices affordable, and make sure there's good internet access in rural areas.
It's about making sure everyone can benefit from these advancements.
Absolutely.
This has been a fascinating deep dive. We've learned so much. What are some key takeaways you hope our listeners will remember?
I think the main thing is that agricultural innovation never stops.
It's a constant evolution.
It is. We're always adapting to new challenges.
Climate change, resource scarcity, new demands from consumers, all of that.
Exactly. It's a balancing act, trying to find ways to feed people while also protecting the planet.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between tradition and technology.
I like that. Finding the sweet spot.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think it's crucial to remember that agricultural innovation is about people.
Not just technology.
Right. It's about empowering farmers.
Giving them the tools and knowledge they need to succeed.
And it's about collaboration.
Collaboration.
Yeah, researchers, policymakers, and farmers all working together to find solutions.
Because everyone has a role to play.
Exactly.
This deep dive has given me so much to think about.
Me too.
I hope it's done the same for our listener.
Yeah, I hope so.
So before we go, I want to leave our listeners with a question. What are your hopes for the future of Indian agriculture? What role should technology play?
That's a great question, one that we should all be asking ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a new topic. Until then, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those questions coming.